And welcome back to the Zanpakuto Creation Series. Today's suggestion comes to us from Shadows82. What's the question? What is the Zanpakuto of Bel Cranel? Is it Cranel? Cranel? What was the I think it's Cranel. Anyway, the main character from Danmchi, or How to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon. I did a Pokemon team for him. Now we're doing a Zanpakuto Creation Series request for him. And this was interesting because I started one way with this character and then ultimately ended up in a completely different way. So my initial thought was he doesn't strike me as anyone overly strong. He grows in strength as the series goes on from what I know, but he starts out very weak. And so I kind of picked him up more as like a melee type user. We know he has a blade. It's not a very impressive blade, but he has a blade right there, as you see in his right arm there, hand there. But the more I thought about it, particularly with the name I gave the Zanpakuto, the more I'm like, no, wait a minute. I can do something with this. This strikes me as a character whose Zanpakuto's ability wouldn't start out as being something that's extremely useful for someone who isn't all that strong to begin with. But for someone who grows in strength as the series goes on, I mean, yeah, we'd be inserting him into a Bleach world, but still thinking of him, like, say, as the Ichigo type, where he would grow in strength as the series goes on, there's something we can do with that. So instead of a melee type, I actually went with a Keto type Zanpakuto. Now, its seal state would actually, I think, be a Tanto to represent the short sword he has there. As someone who doesn't start out as overly strong, but grows in strength as the series goes on. Its release would be Jump, or Jump High, depending on how you want to go with it. Its name would be based, I took this a little bit from his title as he gets stronger. Its name would be Hashiru Usagi, or Running Rabbit. Its Bankai would actually be Kryusagi, or Disappearing Rabbit. And it's and this would be one of the few scenarios we've had on this channel where its spirit is actually a female Zanpakuto. It would be a female rabbit-like woman. Now, why would it be that? Well, his main goal was to start a harem. His motivation is women, so you could make a very strong argument, even though it might be a very male-motivated goal, he could have a female spirit regardless. I mean, look, Shinsui is kind of a pervert in his own way, but he also has a female Zanpakuto because he had a strong female influence. Now, what's the form this Zanpakuto takes? Well, I say it's a Tanto to start with. What it ultimately would turn into is that the handle, I see it being maybe like a foot and a half long, and that it has two relatively equal length reverse blades. Essentially, think kind of like Kage Rosa's Raiga, but much smaller. And what this Zanpakuto does is that by spinning it quick, you can basically create an afterimage of yourself, almost like a true clone that can kind of interact with the environment if you were to pour enough Ryatsu into it. That would be with a lot of training. But what it does is you basically spin it and you then hide in the shadow, kind of like Kageone. And then essentially when the opponent, whoever you're fighting, Hollow, Shinigami, Arrancar, or Quincy, whatever, hits the target, you actually then reappear out of the shadow and basically use kind of like a sneak attack. This is where the idea of the running rabbit comes in, where you're kind of hiding, but you're fast and quick and a little sneaky at the same time. The issue with the Shikai would be that, at least from the beginning, it's not useful for him starting out as a weak Shinigami because he doesn't really have a lot of attack potency behind him. But as he gets stronger, not only can he make an extra clone, not only is his attack better for the sneak attack, but maybe he can make an extra clone here or there. Anytime he spins the blade, he can immediately recreate the clone and hide in the shadow. His Bankai would basically extend this into a much larger, almost double-sided spear, again, kind of like Kage Rosa's Raiga. The blades would maybe be a bit more curved, maybe even looking like a rabbit's foot or a rabbit's ear, something like that, but still be very sharp and powerful. But the idea ultimately is that he spins and ultimately creates like a vast amount of copies of himself, hiding in the consecutive shadows that are all melded together. Or he can actually hide among the clones. So if someone figures out his trick the first time, he can immediately spin his Bankai, create a certain amount of clones again, but this time hide among the clones as they immediately try to attack the shadow. The problem is attacking the shadow doesn't do anything, so you basically you have to get rid of the clones. And in Bankai, again, with enough Ryatsu, the clones do have a physical presence behind them. So not only can he hide in the shadow for a good sneak attack, he can also actually fight with the clones to a certain degree. He also can jump out of the shadow at any point in time, not just waiting for the clone to be destroyed. It's more apt, at least in the Shikai, if someone's not paying attention, that you jump out of the shadow for a sneak attack. Now, the big weaknesses of this Zanpakuto, it has no range capabilities really at all. I mean, you can attack with the clones, but the clones don't have range capabilities either. The clones need extra Ryatsu kind of poured into them upon release to be viable for combat. In fact, a good technique you could use is kind of make only, if you made, say, a dozen clones, which with Bankai you'd be making a lot more probably. But if you made a dozen clones, only pour enough Ryatsu into half of them to be physical. That way, your opponent doesn't know who's an actual fighter and who's just an illusion they have to get past. But it has an issue against light-based Zanpakutos or Zanpakutos that could somehow emit a lot of light, because that would dispel the shadow and immediately pop him out of the shadow. Also, when all the clones are dispelled, he pops out of the shadow regardless. If an opponent knows his ability prior to him using it against them, well, it's not going to matter if he tries to get a sneak attack, because they're immediately going to have the attack aimed at the shadow. That's where melding in with the clones comes into play. Also, he still has to do the action of spinning the Zanpakuto to activate the effect. If an opponent were to say, again, like with the Raiga in the filler arc, someone were to stop his ability to spin his Zanpakuto in his own hand, well, then he's not going to be able to act as Shikai's ability. And beyond that, this Zanpakuto, I think, would be good for someone who starts out. It's a unique ability for someone who starts out weak, but ultimately goes stronger as the series progresses. So that is the Zanpakuto I came up for Ben Cranel. So what do you think? Do you think this is a good fit? I mean, you think Rabbit's a lot lately in Zanpakutos. You want to try to move past that, but sometimes the character just fits. And in this case, I thought it fit. But let me know what you think. Until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.